Welcome back to MTN Live in the Mountains. I'm here with Dan Soucek. He is the North Carolina State Senator for the 45th District. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I also have an extra special guest, Mr. Terry Smith. He's going to be helping me doing the interview today.
Yeah, great to see you, Dan. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
I tell you, so you're coming up to your third term right now. So tell us about, starting in 2010 and everything. And we're fascinated, Brittany and I are both fascinated about your service background, because you're still in the National Guard now. But tell us about graduating from West Point and
Sure.
8 years in the services to start with.
Yeah, that was 8 days after high school graduation. I was off to West Point, and it was a very difficult and trying 4 years, but probably the most formative years of my life, where on a daily basis something still comes up with a lesson I learned or a hardship I endured that I can draw from that helps me in all areas of life. So I am just such a big fan of the military because of not just the act of service you have while in the military, but what it does for the citizens who have served. And that was one reason why I got back into the National Guard, because I missed that aspect of service and wanted to contribute again. I enjoyed being in uniform, so that's a real pleasure to be back there now.
Yeah, I tell you, you've done lots of things, and Brittany, it's amazing. You guys did the Huey. You actually trained in Huey helicopters, Cobra helicopters,
Right.
and all that, Top Gun and everything. I mean, it's kind of amazing, really.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but how did that then go along? So obviously it brought a lot of hardships, as you said, allowed you opportunities to overcome challenges and everything. And so for 8 years, and you worked your way up, to captain at the time, and then
Right.
now you're looking at major, aren't you?
Yeah, that's one of the strange ironies, is that while I was in ministry with the Samaritan's Purse and Young Life, I wasn't in the military at all. I couldn't do both. I couldn't travel as much as I had to. So I got promoted to captain in 1995. So I just finished a course at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and now I'm qualified in the Adjutant General's branch, which clears me for promotion to major. But I've been captain for 19 years, and that's got to be some sort of record.
Oh yeah, that is.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
So, as you look at this now, 2010 was your first term, so you're heading into your third term. A lot of things have happened, and as you look back, also in your time at Watauga, before that, let's talk about some of the things you did, like as a track coach at Watauga
Right.
High School and a cross country coach and Young Life, and that's something that interested you, isn't it, Brittany?
Yes, definitely. Tell us a little bit about that, about Young Life. I thought it was really cool that you were actually a coach at the Watauga High School, so that was pretty cool.
Well, after I'd finished my company command in the Army, I really had to make a decision as to what career path I was going. I looked at Army careers, I looked at civilian careers, and I really felt called into the ministry. And so Young Life is something that impacted me as a high school student. And I was a volunteer at West Point. I was the cadet in charge of the program there. And then I volunteered in different military bases. And so I applied for a position in the Carolinas and said, put me wherever you think I could be most useful. And they placed me in Boone, which is like winning the lottery, if you think about it. And so I was the area director here for Young Life in Watauga and Avery and Ashe counties. And it's all about pouring your life into high school students. And I really enjoyed that, and I was a runner in high school, and so there was an opportunity. They needed an extra coach. I was assistant coach with Lee Wallace and Coach Mack, and I loved it. I loved being out there running. It kept me in shape, and I loved being around students in that atmosphere. Cross country is one of the best sports because everybody gets to participate and improve, and it's discipline and there's camaraderie, and I just love being a part of that. And plus, Watauga is a great school, so it's fun having a winning school as well.
Yeah, and I taught and coached for a lot of years, so I know you and I were talking beforehand, but it continues, doesn't it? Because you run into people who you use, 10 years ago that you used to coach, and people who married athletes that you coached and things. And so it just is never ending, the impact that you've been able to have, not only in the Young Life, but also in the coaching, hasn't it?
Right, and I think that coaching, mentoring, teaching, those are all areas where you can impact a young person's life in a real positive way, and I enjoy doing that.
Yeah. So as you look at the Samaritan's Purse also, tell us about your Operation Christmas Child. You started with that in Asia, regional developer of that, weren't you?
Right.
Yeah.
I oversaw our project in Asia, which was a lot of travel. There was one time where from when I left my house to got to the hotel, it was 42 hours of travel all the way to Indonesia. But I loved that aspect of finding people who are in desperate need and having that's a children's program as well, and having an impact in their lives. And when you impact their lives, you impact parents' lives, communities, and it is a phenomenal program. It's the largest children's aid program in the world. And I loved being part of that aspect of Samaritan's Purse, and also the disaster relief portion, where I did some international, but now I'm working with our North American disaster relief team out of North Wilkesboro, and that's serving. I like serving Americans as well. When someone has a natural disaster, we are out there immediately, meeting the really immediate needs, and that's really gratifying. Rarely in life do you get a chance to serve someone and see the result immediately, but we're able to do that and get people past a real tough part in life, and then they're able to get back on their feet. We just get them over that hump, and that's tremendously gratifying.
Yeah, Brittany, that's Samaritan's Purse, tremendous organization, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think I've always loved being a part of the Operation Christmas Child. A couple of times I've worked with a lot of different groups to put those shoeboxes together, and it's always been a great experience. So.
And that's one of the great parts of the program, is it only exists and succeeds because of people like you. The churches and the families and the schools that put the boxes together are what the project is about. We just kind of facilitate you being able to send a gift to some child in Cambodia and make an impact in that life. How else would you be able to do that from Boone? No. So it's a great facility, but without the volunteers and all the donations, it would be nothing. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for
No,
participating.
it's always been a great event and something to get involved with. So I've always enjoyed putting the boxes together with people. So it's a great team, bringing together different teams of people too. So.
It's really amazing to have Samaritan's Purse, an organization, that's such an outstanding organization right here, so close to us. I mean, the things that are accomplished there are amazing. So as you look now, what I find amazing is that you balance all these different things. I mean, you joined the National Guard again, February of 2013, and then now you're going to be up to Major, and you're in, North Carolina State Senator. You're working with Samaritan's Purse. You're married, have a family. I mean, how do you balance all of that?
It is a challenge, and it feels really overwhelming at times. And sometimes I really do consider, am I able to do all these things well? And one, I have a wonderfully supportive wife, great kids, and that was one of the lessons when I talk about West Point, is people say, how was it? Was it hard? There wasn't a single task that was really difficult. I was good in academics, I was good in sports, all those things, but it was just, there's so many of them. I would say they give you 26 hours worth of work to do every day. And so you have to choose and prioritize and be efficient. And those are the lessons I learned. Last weekend, I drove down to Morganton. I had 2 soccer games with my daughter. And then on the way back through Caldwell, I met with a group of people there at a Roriton club. And my daughter was wonderful. She's a charmer. Yeah. And so I did a little campaigning for the event. And I drove back up, hit my son's game. And then he was at Ted Mack Field. And I kept going right up to Ashe County, just changed my suit in the car, and did a forum up there. So I did a lot in a day, but I still got to go to 3 kids' soccer games in the midst of forums and campaigning. And that's how I manage things, is being effective and efficient that way.
Did you change your suit while you were driving, or
no,
did you?
That would be dangerous. Actually, I changed it in the bathroom of the courthouse. So people saw me walking in like sports clothes, and they're like, you've got a forum here. Yeah. But I changed in the bathroom. It's kind of like Superman.
That's what I was going to say. Or did you change in a telephone booth? Yeah.
It's like the ultimate multitasker.
So tell us now, it's been a lot of things you've accomplished in the 4 years you've been there already, in the 2 terms. Tell us some of the things you're most proud of.
I think I really like being part of a conservative team up there. We do an awful lot of discussion. What are we going to do that's going to have the greatest impact on the most number of people? And I'll start with a few of the boring things, although they're fundamental, is getting the economy rolling in the right direction was our #1 priority and continues to be, because when someone has a job, they have the dignity of work, they're able to provide for their family, they're able to be a tax-paying contributor to society. So a vibrant economy is critical. Then you actually have the funds in government to fund the really important things like education and roads and all those things. So from the very start, that's where we began. We had a huge deficit. We balanced a budget without raising taxes. We did, actually last year, the only state in the entire country that had significant tax reform was North Carolina. We went from one of the highest taxes in the Southeast to competitive. And that's a direction we're going to. I hope in the context of what we discuss here, it's not just where we are, but what direction we're moving in. We're moving in a positive direction for taxes. An example of where we want to go is there was a major company that was looking at Texas and North Carolina to move to. North Carolina offered $80 million in incentives. Now we can talk about incentives and the pros and cons of that. Texas offered $40 million. Guess where they went? They went to Texas because the work, regulatory, and tax environment is still better there. Now we're moving there. We have a desire to go to 0% personal income tax, the only state in the country to ever have a tax and get rid of it. And we think that we can make this a vibrant state for working families, for small businesses, a great place to live, and adequate finances for the long term to be able to fund our priorities. Because that's one of the challenges is our antiquated tax code creates these big bubbles where in good times money goes up high, and if you have a huge surplus and you're a politician, it gets spent. I don't care which party you are, that's a temptation. We're creating a much more solid, gradual growth where it's got the growth that's necessary, but it doesn't spike in the good times and plummet in the bad times, so that we can have long-term sustained planning for our important priorities.
Yeah, so as you look at your constituency there, the District 45, you got Watauga, Ashe, Allegheny, Caldwell, and Avery.
Right.
So, and your office is in Raleigh. And so what do you do? I mean, tell us a typical kind of day, you know, or a typical week where you'd go around to try to see the different areas and the different people.
I don't think there's such thing as a typical week. I keep a calendar of every event I possibly can, and I try to rate them as what is going to be most effective for me to be able to learn what's going on in the district so that I can understand it well. Which key people are important to contact business leaders and community leaders, because I can't know everything that goes on in a district that's actually larger than the state of Rhode Island. But you find key people who, I give them a card and say, you have a concern or a question, you call me because I need your expertise. And that's the value of that. And then I look at what's going on and what the geography is, and I take out MapQuest and I figure out a way to hit as many things as I can so that I can, on one car trip, maybe hit 2 or 3 things. And unless you're efficient like that, I don't know how you even begin to stay in contact with the people of the district.
Yeah. So as you look at some of the things that you've accomplished now, talk to us some of the, you know, I mean, obviously your background being in education and having been a coach and with Young Life and a Sunday school teacher and things like that, that you've co-chaired some of the education committees there in the state, haven't you? So tell us how about that.
Yeah, that was another thing about military and Army is when the Republicans took control, no one had ever been in a leadership position, and all of a sudden we were in all leadership positions. So we really had to learn on the fly, and having a military background actually was very, very helpful in sharing. I chair the education policy, I chair education finance, and then I even chair the Common Core investigation that we had recently, which was, well, we could talk a lot about that. That was challenging and good, and I think we're moving the right direction on that. But those are my major leadership positions. I also chair the ethics committee. It's a joint ethics committee. I've got a meeting on Monday, which is one of the most refreshing things in politics, because we have very, very partisan politicians from both sides, both chambers, and we go in there and people leave it at the door, and they go in there and they use their minds to debate what is best for the legislature, the integrity of the legislature, to serve the citizens. And it's probably the most refreshing thing I've been a part of, because there are people who we walk outside the door and we would agree on nothing, but we go in there and there is a heart of service throughout all of government, which is good to remember in the midst of some of the partisanness that we see.
And Brittany, one of the issues that I'm sure that we've talked about before was in the regulatory with the town of Boone, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, that was one of the most tumultuous issues I've been a part of. It was really personal for a lot of people. Well, we were talking earlier, when something is going to be that much work and effort and strife, I want to make sure it's something that's worth it and importance, because that takes my effort away from other issues. But I thought it was, because in the end I try to say, what is the constitutional principle at stake here? And if there's a significant issue, then that's worth fighting for. Property rights are a fundamental, away from the founding fathers, property rights are in the Constitution because that is how our system of government works, our freedom works, our capitalistic economy. And so the town of Boone had really abused an authority they were given in the 50s, but not for the intention of creating this regulatory limbo for decades of, I like the way your land looks, so we're going to not let you build on it, and we're going to regulate you and charge you for things. It was designed for expansion. I talked to the town of Boone. I went into the ETJ and talked to residents that were in favor of the ETJ and others who were opposed to it. And I felt like in the end, not the perfect solution, but the best solution we could have was to free up the citizens in the ETJ to be regulated by the appropriate level of government. People would say, well, I want to build an ETJ, but I don't like the way the town of Boone is acting here. What can I do? The answer is nothing, because you can't vote for them because you're not in the town of Boone. So you have a government authority imposing on people who don't have the accountability of a vote. Now they are accountable to the county and to the state, and those are people they can vote for. Will there be challenges? Yes, and I'm working with the county government and the citizens in the ETJ who have some challenges in the transition, but at least it's being done at the appropriate level of government with the people that they can vote for. If they don't like, they can vote against. But before, they were in limbo indefinitely with no recourse. And I thought that was a fundamentally flawed governmental operation.
So really, you were looking at the protection of some of the citizens then, weren't you?
Right, and you hear different accusations as to what the reasons were behind it. When I look at nonprofits and ministries, I had people come up $100,000 up to $1 million that these community service organizations were having to pay because of the burden of ETJ. Or even a little old lady at Samaritan's Purse came up to me one day and said, what's going on with the ETJ, because we have property there and we want to build our small retirement home there, and my husband says we can't do it as long as it's in the ETJ. So it's about citizens having the right to build on their own property. It's not about big land development, it's about the regular citizen, and that's the reason why I was compelled to spend that significant effort in that issue.
Yeah, that's great. So now, looking at education again, you've chaired committees with education. There is some issues as you look at the statewide right now in terms of, different parties talking about, spending money on education and things. What's your position on that?
Education is the most important thing we fund in state government. I don't know if you've ever heard when people say, if you want to see what someone's priorities are, pull out their checkbook and see where they spend their money. Over 50% of our state funding that we control goes to education. And I think that's a clear statement of where our priority is. Now, there's no doubt that there are, and for the near future, will continue to be significant challenges. When we inherited a $2.5 billion deficit because the state had been mismanaged really severely. One of the tragedies was right before we took office in the 2008 to 2010 timeframe, the federal government put stimulus in, saying, okay, we're going to give you money for a few years. What the state did was they took 7,500 teacher positions, took the money from them, and used this one-time federal money. Well, what do they think was going to happen to those teachers in 3 years when that money ran out? What was going to happen is we were there and we had to find that money elsewhere, and that was part of the huge deficit. They really defunded 7,500 teachers. We want state money to go for teachers. If they're going to be here long term, it needs to be recurring money that we know is going to be there every year, not going to run out and then raise our hands and say, what are we going to do? Raise taxes. That's horrible planning. So we really have a much better educational plan for the long term. We invested this time in something significant. We can't fix all of it at once. And we know that our teachers are putting up with tremendous hardships, and they're doing an amazing job. And we looked at where would be a place where we can make a really significant long-term impact. And so we gave a $282 million teacher raise just this couple months back, the largest dollar raise in state history. And it didn't just give more money to teachers, but it created a new pay system, which also reenacted the pay system. It's been frozen since before we took office, which means whatever you came in at, you were there forever. Now the teachers can move along and improve along the system. It's a better system for attracting and retaining quality teachers. It was front-loaded. Most of the money went to starting salaries and the younger teachers, because one of the biggest challenges we saw for long-term was, how do you attract and retain the best teachers? 20 years from now, if we're not attracting any teachers right now, we're going to be in trouble. So we thought that's the first thing we need to address and fix, and we're giving about a $5,000 raise over the next 2 years, which I think is going to really fix that. Not completely, but a great step in the right direction. And then we can begin to address some of the other concerns where some of the teachers that are the senior teachers that make over $50,000 got a $1,000 bonus, which is good. I don't think it's adequate. The Senate was actually fighting for a larger raise. We had some controversy between the House and Senate and Governor. So, but I think that's a good thing of how do we pay our teachers more was the argument. Not if we should, but how do we do that? And that's just part of the dynamic, is I hope people realize that we realize that there are great challenges in education. But look at, in 4 years, we've spent $1 billion more on education than when we started. It's not enough, but it's the best we can do when we look at the total picture of the economy. And as the economy grows, we're going to have more funds to do these more important things. So I hope they see the direction we're moving in, and it's a positive one, and not just the fact that we are in still a difficult place. We used to be 48th in the country in teacher pay. Right now, we're somewhere in the middle, around 32nd. Not good enough, but hopefully evidence of our intentions in the direction we want to go.
That sounds great, doesn't it? Yes, been on education. You see Appalachian graduate there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and specifically with App State, I've been spending some time with the new chancellor, who I really.
Oh yeah, she's
I
very
think
nice.
She's going to be really great. And one of the things that the previous chancellor and administration worked with me on was the new College of Health Sciences. I had actually volunteered and taught a little bit in the College of Health Sciences with the health management majors, so I got to see the importance of that, the need in the community, these people graduating, getting great jobs right out of there, and so I was instrumental in the planning funding. I was on the appropriations committee. They said, what else do we need to fund? I said, this money for App State is important. I know it's in my district, but I think it's important for our school, I think it's important for the state and for the region, and therefore it's worth putting forward. And they said, okay. And we put the planning money in place so that that building is on its way. And we're now going to be able to consolidate those classes because it's an important, forward-looking job training skill. And so I like working with App State in those areas.
Yeah, that sounds tremendous, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now as you look ahead, all right, look into your third term and into the future, what do you see as the challenges? You've talked about education there, but what other challenges do you see us looking at in our district, but also in the state as a whole?
I think we need, although we've gone from 10+% unemployment down to 6% in the state, it's still, there's still some challenging statistics inside of that statistic. And so jobs in the economy continue to be our number one focus. We go in and we say, how are we going to do this? And some people say we get distracted by this issue or that issue. Just because we have one focus doesn't mean we can't do other things as well. But we spend more time on that than anything else. And I think one of the greatest challenges and the most beneficial things will be our tax reform. We need to keep moving that in the right direction. There's a reason why it hasn't been fixed since 1932, because it's difficult. Because there were hundreds and hundreds of carve-outs for specific businesses and specific industries. Well, when you create a fair tax system, which is good for business, fair for the state, and really the right way to do things, well, if you've been receiving an unfair amount for a while, it's going to be a little bit painful for you. So there are hundreds and hundreds of industries out there who are like, well, we don't like this, but we're trying to show them how, in the long run, this is going to be beneficial for you because it's going to create so much of a better environment that whatever favor you had in the past that's been taken away is going to be more than made up for in the benefits of a strong economy. That's not always an easy argument to make, but I think that's one of the most significant things we can do.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, big challenges ahead then.
I know.
Yeah. You're doing a tremendous job, though, and it's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to your third term, and thanks so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
Very interesting, isn't it, Brittany?
Definitely. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Do you have a website or
I do.
information?
It's fansofdan.com. I figure with my last name, a little bit difficult to spell or pronounce, I figured we'd go with fansofdan.com.
Absolutely.
We can contact me or find out more information.
For our younger viewers, are you on social media?
I am. I'm kind of in an age in between the two. I like Instagram. That's mine.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
It is definitely the best one.
So I've been enjoying that, and you can see a variety of different things on that. I think it's Senator Soucek is the Instagram.
Okay, great. Definitely.
Really amazing, though, to compile all those different things that he does, all
absolutely.
balance out. With
Definitely
everything.
balancing out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here with us. Always great to see you, and you're doing a tremendous job. And
Thank you.
keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry. We'll be right back after this.